Hello, everybody. Sorry for the long opener there. I was literally just about to start, and then my son came and knocked on the door and was like, I need water. I thought he was in bed. So, all right, guys, we're here. Member stream week 14. We are on the precipice of the fantasy playoffs, I guess. The last week, the playoffs start for some of you this week, right? You got to win to get in. I have a couple of those leagues. I have a couple leagues where I need more than just a win, and some other leagues where I'm kind of just chilling. But it's going to be stressful. We are going to have some bad beats, and it's only going to get more stressful after that. But we're here. I see Chris is first in the chat. I see T is here, just finished his last final. Hey, congrats, man. Love to hear that. Freel's start calling me out for being late. Austin is here. Arthur ruining our stream. Gabe is here. T asked in the Discord if that he's capable of that. I thought he was like 2. He'll be 3 in March, but he is capable of a lot. Yeah, he just he's very competent. And he came down and knocked on the door, and he said he wanted his water bottle, so I had to go find it. But anyway, I'm back. We're going to talk about some Dynasty hot takes. We're going to, of course, do our best to address the questions that were asked in the Discord. So let's go take a look at what we have here. Sorry to anybody that is trying to focus on apparently the Big Ten championship. I didn't even know that was happening. It's not a bit that I don't follow college football very closely. I care about the prospects, but I do not care very much about the games. All right. So going back here, first question that was asked yesterday from Russell's Muscles. I'm going to be honest, I don't know if I have a good answer for it. Question is, do you think your roster construction in general will change going into the offseason and next year? For example, will depth at certain positions be more valuable going into a season, having picks more to be used during the season rather than actually making rookie picks? It's a good question. It might be something I have to kind of reflect on after the season, like what went right, what went wrong, what moves was I able to make? As far as roster construction, I think that we're seeing some things where quarterbacks are being devalued a bit in the market. I don't know how much of that is just Dynasty domain telling you that you shouldn't value quarterbacks and how much of it is just like something natural that is happening. But there is something to be said about quarterbacks being devalued. I don't know if that means you don't want the elite guys or if it means you want them more because they're safer. Again, I'm not sure. And then there's also, I think, a shift happening with running backs where there's still the conventional wisdom of like running backs are really risky and volatile in Dynasty. And I think that line of thinking, while it's not necessarily wrong, I think it might actually be counterproductive right now with the league meta. For a while we had a shift such a heavy shift towards passing in the league that you were seeing fairly comparable scoring between wide receivers and running backs. Like this season, I believe there are 5 running backs that have a higher weekly points per game than the wide receiver one. That might be half PPR scoring, I think, because I heard that on the Underdog show. Underdog's half PPR, but still, you are seeing running backs dominate scoring more so the last couple of years, and I think that does coincide with passing being down, the run game being back in vogue, and also just I think a different landscape in terms of running back talent. When I first started playing Dynasty, it was like the 2017 running back class was all in their primes, and the first round of a startup was like McCaffrey and Barkley and Kamara and Dalvin Cook and Ezekiel Elliott. Like there were like 8 running backs in the first round of Dynasty startups, and then like Michael Thomas or Juju Smith-Schuster or whoever like the wide receiver one that year was. So it was a different game, and it's not just about running back talent. Like people have gotten smarter or change their views on running backs too. But I think that we might be seeing things push back the other way. The problem with answering questions like this is it's always market dependent. So it's like, what is the market going to do? And then do we want to follow the market, or do we want to exploit that to our advantage, to try to win? So I don't know. I definitely like having picks during the season. That was one thing you mentioned, having picks to use during the season. But I don't necessarily want that to be at the expense of rookie picks. I just like having picks. I just like having a surplus of picks all the time, really. I don't think that's going to change, at least when I can. So that's the best I can do for that one, Russell, at least for the moment. Senior Hyde said, for teams that are not going to the playoffs, any strategy around how we should prep for the offseason, especially in leagues where waivers may close. Again, I don't know how much I can really say about this. I feel like at this point in the season, if you're not going to the playoffs, there's not a whole lot you can do. I mean, if you still have trades open, you still want to be trying to move off of depreciating assets if you can. It's not perfect. You're not always going to be able to. I still have a couple guys hanging around on teams that switch to rebuilding mode late in the year. Like, I can't get rid of Ramondre Stevenson. I've offered him for a 3rd round pick every single week. I offered David Montgomery to the Jahmyr Gibbs manager for a 3rd and a 4th round pick. I couldn't get it. So, at a certain point, I think it just makes sense to hold those players. But you still want to be shopping any guys that you think are going to be worth less after the season. You want to be trying to add rookie picks. I mentioned, I think in one of the videos, trying to buy low on rookies, even ones that haven't shown a whole lot, because they could flash something here at the end of the year and build some hype into the offseason. So I do like doing that. As far as like waivers, it depends how deep your league is. My leagues are deep enough where there's just not much out there, but any players you have on your bench that are kind of roster clogger, deep wide receivers you're never going to start, or veterans that are about to retire or crumble into dust, I mean, feel free to drop any of those players and go and pick up any rookies with a pulse, really, or young players or whatever that are on the waiver wire. You might as well do that if you can. So those would be my initial thoughts. Then Yella had a message that was just Luther Burden. I guess he wants me to talk about Luther Burden. Why not? Why not talk about Luther Burden? Because Rome Odunze has a stress fracture in his foot. He is going to be out this week. He's quite possibly going to be out next week, maybe multiple weeks. And, this was always the thesis with Luther Burden. When we said to draft him, it was always, hey guys, he's going to do absolutely nothing for 13 weeks, but don't worry, because Rome Odunze is going to get hurt in the fantasy playoffs, and then he's going to smash. So everything is going according to plan, obviously. But no, Luther Burden has been really promising in the role that he's had. It hasn't been as big as we would have hoped, but when he's on the field, he is efficient. He passes the eye test to me, certainly. It's interesting thinking about how they're going to operate here, because I don't think they're just going to put Luther Burden at X, but what that might mean is that DJ Moore is playing X. I guess DJ Moore has been doing that somewhat already. You're going to see DJ Moore lead the wide receiver room in snaps for sure. And then Burden is going to be second. And I think him and Loveland are both going to see an increased workload in this game. It's not a great matchup against the Packers, unfortunately. And the Bears are trying to be as run heavy as possible because they know Caleb Williams is, maybe bad's not the word that I want to use there, but maybe not the kind of guy that's going to carry your offense to wins. And that's probably going to be even more the case with Rome out. But I think Burden has a legit shot to lead this team in targets tomorrow. He's going to get some design touches for sure. He almost always does. And he's always live for a big play after the catch. So Chris and I made the decision after much deliberation to start Luther Burden in our FFPC final tomorrow instead of Arondé Gadsden. And it is tight end premium, but the Eagles have been a pretty bad matchup for tight ends. The Chargers offense is broken. Justin Herbert's hand is literally broken. Tough call, but we're going to start Burden. I think he has the higher boom potential this week. And that's what we need, because we have already been hit with the Jahmyr Gibbs bomb on top of a good healthy 17 points for Jamison Williams. So we're coming into tomorrow in like a 53-point hole. We are almost certainly going to lose, which is a bummer, because if we won, we would get the final prize, the grand prize of $1,500 for the league, and then we get to go into the sprint. I struggle to see us actually making the sprint, but if Devon Achane and Rashee Rice and AJ Brown can all show up and show out for us, then we have a shot. And Luther Burden, maybe he can give us a 20-point bomb. It would be poetic after I caped up for him all year if he could come through for us in a big game. I'm not going to lie to you guys. Deep down in my soul, I can feel the 4 for 56 stat line for Luther Burden. I can feel it, but I'm really hoping it's better than that. Cap 10, who is here, what's up? I see you in the chat. Tips on mental warfare during the playoff stretch. It's a tough question. I'd say your best bet in terms of mental warfare would be benching all of your players until right before kickoff, so that your opponent has no idea what the projections are and they don't have any idea where they stand. When people do that, I've seen people do that to me, and it drives me insane. A smaller version of that you could do is putting all of your best players in the flex, so your opponent sees, your starters aren't that good, and then it's like they scroll down like, oh my gosh, Jonathan Taylor is in the flex and Puka Nacua is in the flex, and then then they're really shaking in their boots. So those would be a couple suggestions for mental warfare. 577 Tom says Drake, May. Yeah, I mean, what can you say about the 101 in Dynasty? Drake May. Dude is so good at football. I know he's not the QB1 anymore or whatever, but he's just so good. Like, he's going to keep getting better. That's the thing, because he's only 23. This team can absolutely bring better weapons around him, better offensive line play. So I'm going to leave him at 101 and feel fine about that. And I wish I had more shares. I'm going to try to get more shares this offseason. I'm glad you appreciated my answer, Cap. And Scotty, welcome to the stream. I'm just about to get to your questions, so don't go anywhere. Don't touch that dial. Scoots asked, would love to know how to value picks in the early offseason. People always say that picks will gain value up until you're on the clock. I agree in a vacuum, but if I really want, let's say, Achane from a perceived rebuilder, isn't it better to buy him now for a pick I see as fair? The Achane owner may have a rookie in mind that gets sniped before I'm on the clock, and then they're out. Yeah, so 100%, I 100% get what you're saying. I think the idea of picks will gain value till you're on the clock is like, it's more of like a general heuristic, like a generally true statement. It's not something we should take to its literal end. I certainly don't, withhold from trading any picks until I'm on the clock. I think it's just a good rule of thumb to say, like, let's not trade our most valuable picks away before peak rookie season, because it's really easy to underestimate the value of those picks and what you can get for them later. But if you're getting a really good offer now and you're smart enough to kind of think it through, say, okay, this is a value I'm happy with now, and I don't really think I'm getting a better return later. Yeah, you want to pull the trigger on that. I think Jacob Sanderson once said something like, don't trade a first round pick away unless you are confident it's the best return you're going to get during the life cycle of that pick. That was kind of what he said. So that still requires some guesswork on your part. You can never have perfect knowledge of like what a particular pick is going to be worth at its peak value, what somebody might send for it on just the right day when they're in just the right frame of mind. But if you're getting an elite player, somebody like Devon Achane, and you think you're getting fair value, you think you're getting a good price on that asset, the person you're trading with is already inflating the value of that pick to a really high point, then yeah, you absolutely want to go ahead and do that. You don't need to live like in fear that something better could come along, because that's an opportunity to make a strong deal. Now, one thing, let's just go ahead and say this hypothetically. I think in a lot of leagues right now, if the manager that has Devon Achane is in the fantasy playoffs and you were to offer them the 101 pick for Devon Achane, I think a lot of people would say no. I think it would be very, very hard to accept that pick for Devon Achane if you're going into the playoffs. I don't know if I could do it, but I can say with very, very high confidence, the rookie 101 is going to hold more value than Devon Achane by April. So I wouldn't go ahead and I wouldn't go and trade the 101 for Achane today because I know that that pick is going to gain value and it's going to hold more value than him at some point. I think that is a way to think about it. All right. Rich Hill is here. He made a live, and I'm just about to answer his question. I think he was right after. Yeah, he was right after. So let's take a look at his question as well, and then we're just about up to the hot takes. So Rich has a two-parter. When drafting rookies, do you always go with best available? Or how much do you factor in team needs, and how does this change based on rebuilding or playoff teams? So we'll look at that first. Do I go with best available? Again, it's more of a heuristic than like a hard and fast rule. I don't always take the highest player in my rankings. I am in favor of taking the best available in the sense that I'm going to stay within the current tier. So in the last rookie cycle, right, I had McMillan, Hunter, and Hampton at 2, 3, and 4. There was no situation where I was going to, let's say, draft Cam Ward ahead of one of those guys, even if I needed a quarterback. Now, I think it's really easy to follow the rule at quarterback because, let's be honest, like most of the time when you draft a rookie quarterback, you're not getting a strong immediate starting option anyway. So like people that reach on quarterbacks in rookie drafts because they need a quarterback, I think that's kind of dumb. I think you're better off trying to trade the pick for a quarterback because, like, yes, it has worked out, right? You could start Drake May at times last year. You could start Bo Nix last year. You didn't get to use Michael Penix. You didn't get to use JJ McCarthy. I mean, he got hurt, but had he played, I don't think we would have liked what we got. You didn't want to play Caleb Williams last year. So usually you're not really winning with these rookie quarterbacks, especially if they don't run. And Cam Ward was never a guy that was going to run. So you don't want to reach for quarterbacks, but I think you also don't want to, I don't think you want to reach just because you need a running back or you need a wide receiver or whatever. If you are in the same tier, like there are drafts where I took Loveland over Igbuka. There are drafts where I took Igbuka over Loveland. There are drafts where I took Hampton over McMillan and the other way around. I think you can play around with it in the same tier. If your team has a clear deficiency at one position or the other, I'm fine with that. The other things that I think about, because I play in a lot of leagues, I do consider my overall portfolio. Like if I know I've drafted Ted McMillan in 8 leagues, I might lean Hampton just because I have them ranked similarly. I don't really want to be way overexposed to one player and not have the other player. You probably shouldn't worry about that unless you're in like at least 10 dynasty leagues. But for me, I'm in 30 and I don't really want to be so overinvested in one player when I don't have that much of a preference. And then the last thing that I would consider, it doesn't apply if you're in like a newer league where you don't really know, but if you're in more of a long-standing league, it's been a couple of years and you kind of know your league a little bit, the league market matters. The micro market matters sometimes more than the, consensus does. So if you know your league really, really values running backs, like I play in some leagues where people are insane about running backs, you're going to want to break your ties to that direction. And you might want to like artificially adjust your rankings to put those guys higher, because in a league like that, it can be very hard to just go and buy some other player. People are going to hold on really tight, especially in like home league formats. And so, wide receivers are going to be more replaceable. It's going to be easier to go and buy future picks, but it might be really hard to get a workhorse running back. And so it's like, okay, let's just bump Hampton up the rankings. Let's bump Henderson up the rankings because I don't know the next time I'm going to have an opportunity to get a player like that. So that matters. And I think those would kind of all be my considerations there as far as drafting for need. The other question was, what is your thought process when you already have a playoff team, but you have an early pick? I have a playoff team already with the 102. Should I look to trade that for an established star? So I actually just realized I'm in this situation today. I'm in a 36 team league. Yeah, I know. It sounds really crazy. It's a 36 team league that has 3 12 team divisions, and there's 3 copies of every player. It's on MFL. It's a fun league. It basically is like 3 12 team leagues that are all in one league. So you can't have 2 versions of Christian McCaffrey, but there are 3 different Christian McCaffreys that exist in the league, right? That's kind of how it works. So you have lots of trade partners. The playoffs are kind of crazy. They actually start this week. I was very fortunate to get a bye because I have Drake May and I have no backup quarterback, and I have Henderson and I have Juwan Jennings and Hunter Henry and Amon-Ra, who I thought was going to be out. He ended up playing, but luckily I have a bye this week. Anyway, I have my own first still, and I also have another first that I traded for last year, and I just learned today that it is actually one of the 3 101 picks. I knew it was going to be early because the team was really bad. I hadn't checked it because I hate MFL and I don't go on that forsaken website any more than I have to, but it is the 101. So now I have this thought, I have this week off to send some trades, and I'm definitely weighing my options as far as like what to do with that pick. And I might trade it. I think it just depends on where your team is at, right? Like a big thing we come back to on this channel is that your odds to win in a given season are finite. You can only do so much to give yourself a chance. You're not going to impact whether or not you get a bye at this point. This is the last week. So you pretty much know, this is what has to happen to get a bye, or you're not going to get one, or you are going to get one. So you're just talking about the 2 to 3 weeks of playoffs. If you already have a really strong team, I would be inclined to just keep the pick because you're almost certainly going to get a better return for it later, or you're just going to get a rookie later. If you have a team that is like pretty good, but has like a really weak spot, like you're starting Kareem Hunt or something, that's when I would consider shopping that pick. I would go to rebuilding teams that maybe still have a young elite player, but I'd still be looking for good value. Like if you have the 101 locked up, I would really struggle to trade it away for Jonathan Taylor or something, right? Like I would not do that. I just think I think you're going to lose that. So you're going to lose that by so much later on that it's just not worth whatever edge Jonathan Taylor is going to give you. But like in this league where I have the 101, if I could trade that pick for someone like Puka Nacua, I'd probably do it. And I think there are maybe situations where a rebuilder is so enthralled by the idea of having the 101 that they would consider pulling the trigger on something like that. If I was going to put the 101 in the rankings today, I'd probably put it right about where Genti is, maybe right ahead of him, maybe next to Burrow, maybe around 16. And even that might be too low. Like it's crazy how this thing can inflate in value. So I would really struggle to trade away the 101. Later, the further you go down, the lower it is in the rankings. But even the 102, I'd still want somebody like Achane, Rashee Rice, Drake London if he's healthy. 103. Maybe I would consider trading the 103 for somebody like Pickens or Taylor. That's about where I would start to consider it. But yeah, I don't think you need to do that. And you can always look for a different trade. Like if you have your own first and the early first, go and try to trade your own first for maybe a good player that is a little bit older, maybe a good player that's just not quite as good as what you could get for that early pick. But the early first is just such a good asset to have for finding future stars. I am pretty hesitant to trade it away unless you're legitimately getting like, an elite asset that is going to be within that same value range, by rookie draft season. All right. Clanger said, you've made a couple controversial trades value-wise recently. Maybe a walkthrough of process and how you see the assets settling into the offseason would be a good topic. I'm going to circle back to that in a second. I just want to hit these last... actually, the last thing before the hot takes was, what do you do with Caleb Johnson, says Scoots, and how do we avoid someone like him next year? What do you do with him? I mean, I think you just hold him. There's really no point. Like, if someone's going to give you a second, I'd take a second. Maybe an early third. Otherwise, I would just hold him. I'd be more inclined to try to like buy him for nothing than I would be to trade him away. I think there's a chance he's good or could do something at some point. We saw Trey Benson basically didn't do anything, and he still had a chance to get some hype and be traded for stuff. He ended up getting hurt immediately, but like he did get some value. How do you avoid someone like Caleb Johnson? I mean, we were lower on him in the rankings than the consensus because of the lack of pass catching and the lack of excitement about this offense. So I think to some extent we did avoid him. I mean, if you were going off of my rankings, I think you'd be pretty unlikely to get him. I didn't get him in any of my rookie drafts. So Scoots, you might have just gone off the script, but in all seriousness, like sometimes guys fall or whatever. If you took him, I don't think there's anything glaring that we could look at to say like, hey, this guy's not going to get any work. He got drafted in the 3rd round and he's actually going to be behind journeyman Kenny Gainwell, and like he's not going to touch the ball. Like, I think that's pretty hard to predict from what we saw. 3rd round draft capital is not a guarantee of anything, but it's also not nothing. Kenneth Gainwell did not really earn anything other than, some change of pace work in Philly. He didn't sign for much money. I think this is just a combination of Caleb making some boneheaded plays, not being good in pass pro, Arthur Smith being Arthur Smith, like just a lot of factors here that were pretty hard to see. So again, I was lower on the overall profile. Don't think this outcome was likely. Don't think it was very predictable. And I don't think we need to have a huge takeaway from it. Anyway, as far as the controversial trades, if you are curious to see any of these trades, you can go to the Paul's Trades channel and see them. I've gotten some vomit emojis recently on my trades, and that hurts my feelings, guys. Usually you like my trades, but I've been clowned on the last several deals that I've made. So let's take a look. I think the 3 most important deals all involve either Justin Jefferson or George Pickens. Going back to the first of these controversial deals, which was, 3 days ago on the 3rd, it was a trade where I sent away Jefferson, Kyler, Parker Washington, and a 4th. I got back Joe Burrow, Jawan Jennings, and a 2nd. My own 2nd. I'm going to get into this playoffs as the 6th seed. I think I'm like 5th in points, so I'm kind of like kind of in the middle. I do have Christian McCaffrey. I do have Henderson, who's sort of coming on. I thought he was coming on to his league-winning run, and then this past week, things got shuffled up again. I do have Rice. I do have Nico. So I have some good pieces. Now I have Joe Burrow. This is a 6-point passing touchdown league. That is important to me when it comes to Joe Burrow. I think he's a significantly better asset in that format, where I kind of hate Joe Burrow in 4-point because he's so touchdown dependent and the touchdowns don't really add up. In 6-point, he has a very, very high ceiling. I think he was like the QB2 or QB3 in 6-point last year. So that's one thing for me that matters in this deal. Sending Jefferson for Burrow in that format. I mean, even in our regular rankings, which are 6-point, I have him ahead of Jefferson. And I think, what was Burrow coming into the season in startups? He was a top 10 pick. He was like the 8th or 9th pick most of the time in startups. I don't really see any reason why he's not going to go back to being that player again in the offseason, especially because the Bengals schedule is pretty nice. The Bengals play the Bills this week, so that's a shootout. Yeah, they play the Bills this week. They play the Ravens the week after. Then they have soft matchups against the Dolphins and the Cardinals before they play the Browns in week 18. Every matchup for these guys the rest of the way is a fight to win the division, and the Ravens are just bad enough to keep them in it. The Bengals defense still sucks. So we're going to see Joe Burrow being Joe Burrow, throwing the ball 40 times, probably scoring lots of fantasy points, which helps me in the playoffs. It also helps to restore any of the value he lost from missing most of the season. On the other hand, I have much less confidence that even with a soft schedule, Justin Jefferson is going to end the year on a super high note with JJ McCarthy at quarterback. Justin Jefferson is currently scoring like 12 and a half points per game. And JJ McCarthy is going to come back. He's going to start the rest of the season. He's not going to be, I don't think he's going to be a very helpful asset in the fantasy playoffs. Maybe he does have a spike week where he catches a touchdown or something. But in general, I don't think he's giving us any kind of league winning production. So I'm totally fine with turning Jefferson into Burrow here, where I think I'm getting the asset that's going to hold more value in the offseason and help me more now. So the other part of this trade is Kyler and Parker Washington in a fourth, I guess, if you care about those pieces, for Jawan Jennings in a second. The second could be late. If it's late, then I don't really feel bad, that I gave myself a chance to win this thing. If it ends up being like the 207, then that's a legit, decent asset. And then Jawan Jennings, basically this is like Kyler for 2 mid-seconds in my mind. Jawan Jennings does have a nice schedule in the playoffs. I can use him as my last flex. He was really just a nice balancing piece here to make the trade work. I don't think Kyler should be viewed, like I've talked about Kyler as a buy. I think he's going to get a starting job next year. I don't think we should look at him as this locked and loaded great quarterback option in Superflex. You look at how Tua has been treated this year as a guy like, this might be the end for him. This might be the last year. Kyler could go to a bad team where he doesn't score a lot of points. He could also go to a new team and play poorly and lose a lot of value. So basically, I'm just not going to lose sleep over selling Kyler for Jawan Jennings in a second, even if that is a slight value loss, even if he's the better asset between those three. I don't really care that much. So to me, I think this is a fair deal. Again, I think it helps me and makes sense for my team. The next deal, I think, is much easier to criticize. And this is one I sent 2 days ago. George Pickens, I traded away Justin Jefferson for George Pickens, a 27 second and a 27 fourth. This is a deal that I thought about for a while, and I'd be lying if I said it didn't have anything to do with, rest of season projections. I'm a good playoff team here. I'm actually the 2 seed in this league, or the 3 seed, and I'm facing the 2 seed with a chance at the bye. So I did actually, I made this trade partially hoping for a George Pickens explosion on Thursday Night Football against the Lions that would help me get the bye. I thought that could be a big swing in my expected value rest of season if I was able to get the bye versus not getting it. I didn't get the bye. I didn't get the boom week I was hoping for. He didn't score very well at all. Justin Jefferson will probably score more points than Pickens this week. So that's unfortunate. But I think we obviously should still feel comfortable with Pickens as the better option rest of season. And here's the thing. I went back and forth on this in the league winner chat for a while, talking about Pickens versus Jefferson and whatever. I really struggle with Jefferson to see how this gets a lot better. So here's what we need to understand. Justin Jefferson, he's 26. He will be 27 in June. So next year, age 27 season. Who is playing quarterback for the Vikings in 2026? Probably JJ McCarthy plus a backup, Marcus Mariota. There are no quarterbacks. Like, the Vikings could try to draft somebody. They're going to have like a fringe top 10 pick. They could try to draft somebody. Are there any good quarterbacks in this class that are going to be available at pick 11? Are they going to mortgage their future to move up for another quarterback after they just took McCarthy? The free agent options are non-existent. Daniel Jones is not leaving the Colts. That's not happening. There are no free agent quarterbacks. Marcus Mariota is probably the best free agent quarterback. Mac Jones is under contract. The 49ers are not going to trade Mac Jones. He saved their season. and they're going to want to have him for that opportunity next year. Jacoby Brissett is under contract. He's probably more expendable because the Cardinals are not going anywhere. But like, is Jacoby Brissett? I mean, Jacoby Brissett would be great for Jefferson, but are the Vikings going to view Jacoby Brissett as a great option? I'm going to guess no. They're not going to go out and get one of these fun gunslingers like Brissett, like Jameis Winston. Like, Kyler Murray is probably the best realistic option. And I'll admit that would be decent for Jefferson, and it would definitely help me to help restore some confidence. It just feels like in 90% of outcomes, something close to 90%, we're looking at J.J. McCarthy next year plus a backup quarterback like a Marcus Mariota, somebody that is, affordable, somebody that is available on the market. I don't see a world where Justin Jefferson is getting incredible quarterback play next year. And you can say, well, yeah, but it's got to be better than this. And to that I say, sure, it can absolutely be better than this. He's scoring 12.5 points per game. If he's scoring 17 points per game, that's still really good. But am I going to regret trading him away if he's scoring 17 points per game? Like, when Justin Jefferson was a top 8 startup pick, the expectation was this is a guy that can go ahead and give you 20 points per game. That's what you want. That's the Jamar Chase, Puka Nacua, JSN. That's what you're hoping for. Is there a world where he scores 20 points per game next year? I'm genuinely asking because I don't really understand how it can happen. On the other hand, George Pickens is currently scoring like 18 points per game this year, 18 or 19. He's over 2 years younger than Justin Jefferson. And I would say that there is a very, very high percentage chance, like over 90% chance, that he is on the Cowboys next year. At worst case scenario, it's the franchise tag. Teams do not let wide receivers like this leave. They don't. They just don't. Unless you're the Steelers, which, whatever. They're not going to let Pickens out the door. So Pickens will be back next year with Dak Prescott. Even if Jefferson gets a slight bump in his situation, what is the likelihood that we're actually projecting Justin Jefferson to score like a meaningfully higher amount of points next year than George Pickens? I guess that's the question for me. I get the brand equity with Jefferson. I get the talent argument, but I do think situation matters in Dynasty. And the example that comes to me is AJ Brown, where AJ Brown at his peak in 2022, 2023 was like universally agreed to be one of the best, absolute best wide receivers in the NFL. He was in the top 3 conversation. No matter who you asked, it was like Chase, Jefferson, AJ Brown. Those were the best. Devontae Adams. These are the best wide receivers. And yet he was not valued in Dynasty anywhere close to that first, second round. Well, he was usually in the 3rd round. He wasn't valued in the 1st or 2nd round. With Justin Jefferson, he's now getting to the age that AJ Brown was in those conversations. And the situation is lackluster, just like it was for AJ Brown. When he was on a team, it was like, hey, we know AJ Brown is awesome, super efficient, 3 yards per out run, but his team's going to be 32nd in pass attempts. Like, there's just no way he can score. And I know that people were saying that because I was saying that when I had a podcast before the YouTube channel, maybe even on the YouTube channel. I don't know. We've been doing it a while now. I was saying, look, the talent for AJ Brown is there. The production's not going to be there because there's not enough passing volume. I know Jefferson's done it before, but you still have to look at his situation and say, hey, the talent is there. I don't know if the production can possibly be there with the way the situation is. So it feels like a little bit of, for the people that are having such a visceral reaction, it does to me feel like a little bit of just this anchoring bias of like, what do you mean Jefferson for Pickens in a second? Jefferson's a 1st round startup pick. Pickens is like a 6th round startup pick. But in reality, I think that both of them have obviously moved towards each other. Jefferson's come down, Pickens has come up. And I think if we're being realistic about their situations, it's just not that hard for me to see Pickens outscoring him. So this isn't to say I couldn't lose the trade. It's not to say that I'm objectively right. That's how I see it. And I don't know if I'm just overlooking something really obvious, but again, short of JJ McCarthy becoming good, I just don't know. I think it's going to be disappointing. Like, you look at here from from Chowja 1. Garrett Wilson was putting up 20 for a bit this season. I mean, sort of true, I guess. Like, what do we call a bit? Because I think the reason I like full season numbers is that there's room for variance to kind of level out. You look at Garrett Wilson, he started the year, 22 and a half, 9, 24, 20, 19. So yeah, through his first 5 games, he was at 20 points per game. He also had 4 touchdowns in those 5 games. And he was way out producing his expected points. Like, it was kind of insane, actually. Like, if you were watching Garrett Wilson, I think there were like 3 different games where he scored some ridiculous touchdown, like really late in the game, essentially in garbage time to get to those numbers. Can Justin Jefferson do that? Sure. But you're also talking about the difference between a team that had Garrett Wilson and no other target earners versus Jordan Addison on the team, which does matter. I think it does matter. So, yeah. Is Jefferson still one of the top 3 wide receivers in the NFL? I totally think so. Is he going to produce like one? My guess is no. So I'm comfortable selling him if I'm getting that type of value. I'm open to disagreement on whether Pickens is worth that. I wasn't super encouraged by his the effort on display on Thursday Night Football. Feels like it was different than what we'd seen from him the rest of the year. Maybe he just got frustrated. Maybe he was just having an off night. I don't really know. But in general, I think he has developed into a very, very good wide receiver. I think you could see them going very close to each other in redraft leagues next year. And if that's the case, I'm getting the same-ish production with a younger player, and I'm getting picks on top. All right. Last deal. This probably all just sounds like a bunch of cope. It's not meant to be cope. It's just trying to explain where I'm coming from. The last trade is one that I made for Pickens yesterday. I traded away Brian Thomas, JCM, remember that guy, and a 2026 first. This first belongs to the 1 seed, and the 1 seed, I'm the 2 seed in this league. The 1 seed is like lapping the field. This guy has JSN and Puka and Chase. He just has a crazy team. Obviously not guaranteed to win, but I think he's almost certainly going to be in the final. So we're looking at 111, 112 here, most likely, plus Brian Thomas for George Pickens, AJ Barner, and Dalton Schultz. Now, here's the context. Like I said, I'm the 2 seed. My team has been a little bit hit with injuries. I'm very shallow in the flex spots. This is a start 11 league, and it's tight end premium. Start 11 league, tight end premium. So on a regular week for me, like Barner and Schultz could potentially be starters for me. The team is top heavy. So I talked about this like last week or the week before, but it can make sense to buy when you have a team that is kind of studs and duds. This team qualifies as that. I have Lamar, who's supposed to be a stud, and Dak. I have Christian McCaffrey and Ashton Genty. I have Trey McBride, but then I have some pretty mediocre players. And so what I'm able to do here is I'm able to take Brian Thomas, who's this wide receiver that holds value in theory, but is not going to be very useful the rest of the season, most likely. He's genuinely like 4th on the target totem pole for the Jaguars right now. Parker Washington, when he's back, is arguably going to be ahead of him. Jacoby Myers is like clearly the alpha in this offense right now. Brenton Strange is getting more work. Brian Thomas is basically running clear out routes. He's just not in the game this year. Could it improve? Sure. The pick, again, very late. Take it with a grain of salt. This class is projected to be kind of top heavy. Like, we don't know for sure how good those late firsts are going to be. Probably going to still have more value in April than they do now, but you probably aren't getting a stud there. We'll see. JCM is whatever. He's a throwaway at this point. 7th round running back who is, can't beat out Chris Rodriguez. Doesn't hold a lot of value. We get Schultz, who's like legitimately putting up 11 or 12 points per game. Barner, who's a sleeper breakout candidate for me. And then Pickens, who is a top 5 fantasy wide receiver. So yeah, the vomit emojis, they belong to Austin, Nico, Scoots, Double King, and a member named No, who I don't think I've ever talked to. But yeah, I'd be curious why they're vomit emojiing this one. Maybe just have more faith in Brian Thomas than me. I'll take the top 5 fantasy wide receiver, to be honest, in the playoffs, and I'll figure out the rest later. So those are my trades. Those are my thought processes. Let's talk about these hot takes. Try to get out of here at a reasonable value. Let's see. So I asked you guys for some hot takes. Kind of like, there's a channel on YouTube called Ship Chasing. Or actually, I think it was Peter Overzet that did it. He did this like truth serum takes where he had all these different analysts say like, this is the thing that I really think deep down, even though I wouldn't say it like in my analysis. But that was kind of the idea here, is like stuff that you think, you know, deep down, but it doesn't necessarily track with the data or the facts. And I just want to look at these. I just thought it'd be entertaining. And I'll talk about like, if I think there's any basis for this, or if I think you're way off the mark, I can rank them on how hot they are maybe. But yeah, we'll see what comes of this. I have one I'll share at the end. Here we go from Chris. Well, I have one I'll share at the top and then at the end. The first one I had was Justin Jefferson will never be valued as a top 5 dynasty wide receiver again. And that pretty much just goes with what I've been talking about. I think we're looking at a frustrating age 27 season. And then I think by the time things potentially could get fixed, when he's 28 years old, I think the ship has kind of sailed for him to be inside that top 5. So I think we've seen the last of Justin Jefferson inside the top 5 wide receivers. That's my take. He could have a top 5 scoring season, but I don't think he'll ever be in the top 5 dynasty conversation again. That's my take. All right. Speaking of top 5 wide receivers, Chris Armad says Rashee Rice is a top 5 dynasty wide receiver. It's probably like if we're going at a 5 here on the hot scale, it's probably a 3. I have it JSN, Chase, Puka, Neighbors, and then I have Amon-Ra, Lamb. I'd rather have Amon-Ra and Lamb, and I'd still rather slightly have Jefferson, but I have Rice at 8, and I don't think it's like that hot to say Rice over Amon-Ra, Rice over Lamb. He's a little bit younger than those guys. I think he's also a worse player, but it's also possible that him being a worse player just never matters if he just plays with Mahomes forever and gets all this schemed up usage. So I see a little bit of risk there where I don't want to rank him that high, but I understand the rationale for it. Trent, yeah, I literally, like, I don't know if you're a member, if you're in the superstar tier or not, and you can see the rankings. I have Jefferson in the same tier as Rice. I have him 2 spots ahead. So it's a light preference to Jefferson. Again, I do think there's volatility with Rice. I think first of all, he's on probation. He's maybe not been known to make the best decisions. There's also risk of Andy Reid retiring and the offense getting changed up. There's risk of Rice not getting a long-term contract with the Chiefs. There's risk that they add a different pass catcher to this offense that's more versatile and more capable in other areas. Like, Rice is not a great man beater. He runs a lot of his routes close to the line of scrimmage. There's just some limitations that give me pause. Is he going to produce as a top 5 wide receiver as long as he's in this exact configuration? Probably. I think he's kind of like the Devon Achane of wide receivers. Although I am coming around on Achane as just being an elite talent that is maybe more situation proof than I've given him credit for. He has still really benefited from the Mike McDaniel offense and how it caters to his strengths and, peppers him in the passing game. So I just think there's enough risk where, like, I'm going to defer to Jefferson. If somebody was going to give me Rice in a second, I'd absolutely take it. I'd easily take it. And I might take less. But yes, slight preference in a vacuum to Jefferson. Next, we have Russell's Muscles. JJ is a low-end dynasty wide receiver 1. We already talked about that. I agree. AD Mitchell fan club, aka Doc Birdie, says Egbuka is a career wide receiver too. So we talked about that a little bit in the Roast the Ranks channel, where he said, like, I think he's going to end up being like a Devonta Smith type. Obviously, there's no way of knowing. I thought Ladd McConkey looked like a stud last year, and he's come down to earth and hasn't maintained the same type of target earning. So we never know for sure. What I'll say about Egbuka is that he is having a much better rookie season than Devonta Smith or T. Higgins. He has a 25% target share on the year. That's really, really strong. And his target share has increased, as the season's gone along. Even though the production has been down, the target share has increased. He showed out really well in reception perception. I mentioned in the video this week that Matt Harmon called him the best offensive rookie in this class. So there's a lot working in his favor. And I don't know, like, if he is a career wide receiver too, I guess I'd be curious what the mechanism is that causes that. Because he's shown the ability to win outside and inside. He's not a limited athlete. He's not undersized. Like, he's 6'1", 205. He runs a 4.48. There's nothing about him that is not, like, he is a prototypical star wide receiver for this day and age. He's about the same size as Jamar Chase. So it's not like there's anything wrong with him from a build standpoint. Again, he can play outside, he can play inside. He's good after the catch. So they do design targets for him. That's good for having a high ceiling, getting like screen passes and stuff. He can win deep, he can win short. I'm not really sure what the limiting factor would be that would cause him to be a career wide receiver too. Now, it's hard to be a wide receiver one. There's only 12 of them every year. So is it possible that there are 12 guys that end up being better and score more points? It's possible. But I don't know what exactly will prevent Emeka Egbuka from being like an 18 plus points per game wide receiver. That's all I'm saying. When I look at his profile, I see all of that potential there. He's going to have to keep improving, but typically that's what we see from year one to year two, and especially from a guy like him who, by all accounts, is extremely high character and extremely hardworking and has only gotten better throughout his playing career. So not to mention, you're going to see Mike Evans and Chris Godwin exit the picture sooner than later. Not that they'll never bring in another wide receiver, but like, he's going to be the top dog. So yeah. Is it possible he's a career wide receiver too? Sure. But it's not what I would project, I guess. Austin said Marv should still be in the 1.5 to 2 base first tier in the rankings. But then later, I think he said he doesn't really believe that. So I don't really feel like talking about it. I give that a 5 out of 5 on the hot scale because he hasn't done anything to deserve that. He just gets outplayed by Michael Wilson. So I'm going to go with no. Scoots says Jaden Daniels is still QB1. I mean, I think he could be the QB1 again. I just don't see any reason to rank him like that now, I guess. So yeah, if it's something you still believe deep down, he could totally be the QB1 again. It wouldn't surprise me if he gets to that point. But right now, with how well Drake May is playing, the points you're getting from Josh Allen, the state of the Washington Commanders franchise, I think it would probably be too cute to try to value him there now. But yeah, I still think he's really good. As long as he can stay healthy, I do think he will get back into that conversation. Clanger, Rome is a late one player. And then we have the general Dynasty players too low on elite running backs and startups. And later we have a comment from Rich Hill that says, where is it? It's never worth investing in elite running backs due to their volatility and relative cost. So we should probably come back to that one and talk about both. I'm going to try to like rapid fire some of these since we are coming up on an hour. I disagree on Rome being a late first player. I think I was obviously lower on Rome coming into the season, But when you look back at his rookie year, you did have pretty much everyone on the Bears was inefficient. The passing game was really bad. Caleb was really bad. He looked great in the isolated stuff in terms of, film evaluators saying, can he win? Can he separate? He comes in this year, he starts off really, really hot, not just in terms of efficiency, but like first read targets, getting the usage. He had all the coach speak in the offseason. And then his production drops off a cliff, and all of a sudden he's out with a stress fracture in his foot. I think what we saw is that he was playing through this injury for quite a while, and that was why he wasn't producing. That would be my thought. Now, that doesn't mean that the high point of where I had him ranked, after five weeks or so is going to hold. But I do think it means he's better than what he's been lately. So I'm comfortable with him, where I have him in that wide receiver, like 19 to 20 range. Maybe I have him a little higher than that, but I definitely think he's in the base first tier at least. And in fact, I think I'll put him in the base first tier. I had him just ahead of it, but I think he should be there because, again, we saw some proof of concept early in the year. He did have the prospect pedigree. Like, he was a good prospect. He was a top 10 pick. And we still see guys get better even into their third season. Like, think about JSN year 2 to year 3 leap. So you pair all that, not to mention with how inaccurate Caleb has still been. And Rome leads the NFL in fantasy points lost due to drops. So Scott Barrett posted it like a couple weeks ago. He was sitting around like 3 points per game lost due to drops. And yeah, I guess it sucks that he has drops, but they're also very fixable. And so if you can fix the drops and add, 3 points per game, not that he's never going to drop anything, but like you add a couple points per game to what he's been producing, all of a sudden I think it's a different conversation. So for all those reasons, I do want to remain optimistic and leave the light on. I don't think he should be sitting next to guys where we already know that they are just a career 13, 14 points per game guy. Like, I would just so clearly rather have him than Devonta Smith or Jordan Addison, or even like personally, I think I would rather have him than Jalen Waddle. Like, these 26, 27, 28-year-old wide receivers that are going to give you 14 to 16 points per game, hopefully. I just feel like there's more upside there that I want to bet on. But yeah, I mean, Trent brings up a reasonable question. How can we be high on Rome, Loveland, and Burden? That offense can really support all of them with Caleb. The truth is the offense probably can't support all of them with Caleb. And I wouldn't like to have all three of these players on the same dynasty team. But the way I see it is that Loveland and Burden have not reached a value ceiling where it's like cost prohibitive to invest in any of these players. There will ultimately be a big winner and loser here, but we don't know who it is yet. Like, Rome could continue to improve and he could be the clear alpha next year. Burden could ascend and he could surpass Rome. It's possible. Loveland could be good enough to become kind of the Brock Bowers of this offense and be the primary target. We just don't know. And I think all of them have the talent in a vacuum to be worth investing in. So, we can hope and pray that Caleb Williams becomes good enough and this offense is high powered enough to support all of them. Probably won't happen, but we haven't gotten to a point like we were at a point with the Lions last year where the players were priced in such a way that they couldn't all hit. Like, Laporta was going high and JMO was going high. And then you also had Gibbs and Amon-Ra as top 2 round startup picks. Those guys couldn't all hit at cost. And we saw this year, JMO and Laporta were falling short of expectations. Now, JMO is getting bailed out because Laporta got hurt, but they couldn't all hit. But with Loveland and Burden, they're still ascending. They're still young. They're going to have value insulation. They're going to also have contingent value, if anyone else in the offense gets hurt. So I think you can just make the bet on those guys individually and just assume that it's going to sort itself out. And if it gets to a point in the offseason where everybody's high on Rome and everybody's high on Burden and everybody's high on Loveland, then we can decide who do we actually want to be in on at cost? Like, who do we think is worth investing in? And if you say right now, like, I would rather have Burden with a plus or Burden at a cheaper cost than Rome at his cost, I think that's reasonable. But I just don't think any of them are like too aggressively priced yet. All right. Yella said Allen and Mahomes still 101 and 102. I mean, Allen 101 is not a hot take at all. I think that's a total coin flip, and I'm fine with that. Mahomes at 102, I get it. And I don't think it's like, even though I don't have him ranked anywhere near there, I think I have him at 13. I don't think it's like the most insane thing I've ever heard, because obviously he's Patrick Mahomes and Patrick Mahomes is amazing. At the same time, he's 30 years old. He's putting up 22.8 points per game this year. He's the QB2 in points per game. That's great. He's running a little bit more than recent years. He's tied his career high in rushing touchdowns already with 5 games to go. He's also nearing a career high in rushing yards. He's almost there with 5 games to go. He's playing good football. That being said, he had 2 years before this where he was the QB 10 and QB 11. I just think at 30 years old, you're never going to get me back to that point with him, because I don't think he's playing close to his ceiling right now. Whereas like Allen, even Lamar, Lamar, Daniels, May, I think they have an element with the rushing where actually I'd say May, the way that he scrambled this year is like pretty comparable to Mahomes. It's just that you're getting back 7 years. But like Lamar, Daniels, Allen, they just have such a high ceiling on the ground that you're not gonna convince me. Puka is a McVay and Stafford merchant. This is the worst take that Yella has. I think anybody with eyes can say like pretty confidently that Puka Nacua is a top 5 wide receiver in the league. And I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on that. But any opportunity you have to clown him for it, feel free to do that, because it's a pretty embarrassing take to have. Senior Hyde says we should be drafting elite running backs over elite wide receivers in dynasty startups. So we've had a few comments here about running backs. I think we're going to have to look at running backs really, really closely in the offseason and really reevaluate our approach, because the conventional wisdom has been take your wide receiver, build around your wide receivers, build around your quarterbacks. You can fill in with running backs later. They're too risky. They're too injury prone. They don't hold their value. Their careers are basically over by the time they're, in year 3, and you don't want these guys on your dynasty teams. And that has been the prevailing conventional wisdom. It's how I played dynasty for a while. And I just don't know if it's true. I just don't know if it's true. Like, what is the difference really between Jahmyr Gibbs as an asset right now as a 23.7-year-old running back on the Lions, but versus CeeDee Lamb, who is a 26.6-year-old wide receiver on the Cowboys? Like, what is really the difference between those two in terms of like expected years left? Like, you can say wide receivers are going to age more gracefully. That doesn't always happen, right? AJ Brown is 28. And what is he doing this year? He looks like he looks somewhat diminished from his peak. We saw it went really fast for Julio. It went really fast for some of these wide receivers. And then we also see on the other side, Christian McCaffrey is 29, and he is still a total scam, even though he's not a great rusher anymore. Derrick Henry has been going strong past age 30. I think I have a suspicion that some of the running back age discourse that was very trendy and very in like 2020, 2021, 2022 was actually just a quirk that resulted from several years in a row of bad running back classes. I'm not muted. Refresh it. I'm not muted. My sound is still on. Everything's good. I think we had several bad running back classes in a row. And we had some weird running back careers that were cut short, like David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell came crashing down pretty quick. Like we had some of these guys that were big and then they flamed out. Todd Gurley had the knee thing. And I think what happened is people made this correlation like running backs just don't last that long, when in reality we were working with this very small sample of data. And certainly there's some truth to the idea that a running back is not going to typically play as long as a wide receiver. But I think that the level to which we took that and the fear surrounding running backs probably went too far. And now I think it has affected players like Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson, where I had this like inherent fear of ranking them aggressively that I had to overcome. You know, Jahmyr Gibbs is now my 7th ranked player in Dynasty. He is, he's scoring a ridiculous number of points. He's the running back 3 in points per game right now. He is, I think he's the best running back in the NFL. And he's 23.7 years old. Like, why would we not want that asset on our team? Like, what exactly is it that we're afraid of? That he's going to tear his ACL? Because wide receivers do that too. I don't know, man. So yeah, I think we do have to have a big conversation about where we rank the running backs. Because the other big thing is when you look at the scoring this year, and 1-year samples are always going to be dangerous, but the top scorers are the guys that we knew were going to be the top scorers this year. Like, we didn't really get a lot of those surprise breakouts from those cheap running backs. So it's like, did you have the running backs or did you not have them, right? We have McCaffrey, Taylor, Gibbs, Bijan, Achane. James Cook was like kind of gettable. Bucky, Jacobs. And then you have like Javonte, but he's, 16.3 points per game. He's not like winning you leagues. I mean, it's great if you got him cheap, but he's not like winning you leagues at 16.3. So it's like, if you want these elite running backs, you do have to pay. So yeah, we're going to have to really think hard about this. I don't have a good answer of how to balance the slightly increased risk versus the scoring potential. But I don't think we want to be afraid of running backs. Then we have this take here from DRV. JSN will be next year's BTJ. Again, I mean, that's a 5 out of 5 hotness scale. I don't know, other than having a 3-letter name and no, I can't think of anything else. I don't know what the argument would be for that. I'm going to go with no. JSN is just one of the best in the league. Is he going to do this again next year? Probably not, but he's awesome. All right. We're going to close things out with this question from Cap10 because I am tired and I think I hit on all the stuff I really wanted to hit on. I do see some other stuff here that was posted later. We'll have to push it off to another week. Last question from Cap. A unique league mechanic that you low-key want to have in every league you're in. I don't know if I have a great answer for this. I do like a little variety in my leagues, to be clear. I like the idea of the 6th playoff spot being given to the team with the most points. I just think it keeps people in it, and I think it prevents something that's going to happen to me in one of my leagues is that I'm going to miss the last playoff spot because of record, even though I have the 4th most points and a lot more points than the teams ahead of me that are going to make it. So I do like the idea of having a 6th spot for the most points, and that'll be my answer. All right, cool. That'll do it, guys. I did promise one more take. Here's my last take. And this is like truth serum. This isn't like, I'm not ranking it this way. I'm not saying go make this deal. I kind of think I would just rather have Jackson Dart in Dynasty than Joe Burrow. So that's my hot take. The rushing upside, the age. I think he's good. I think I would just kind of rather have Jackson Dart. That's my take. That's what we'll end on. Good luck this week, guys. I'll talk to you soon.